Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Calm is Hot. I'm your host, Jade. My pronouns are she, hers, and I have a very special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's good to see you. My name is Chris Covington. I am a community activist and the City of Long Beach Relations Commissioner. And my pronouns are they and he, and I'm just a hometown lover.
That's awesome. And I love all of the plants behind you.
Thank you. It's a labor of love, and they are definitely my plant babies. Every Saturday I water them. And as I'm watering them, I also water myself. So taking in the wellness of reflection and taking care for plants is very healing.
I love that. Totally agree. Now, we have a lot we want to dive into. I know that you've been doing activist work for quite a while. We go back a few years, and I really appreciate this about you. I love it. I admire you. And before we dive into all of that, I want to know, what is one way you're experiencing joy?
Currently, right now, the way that I'm experiencing joy is self love and my journey of self realization and wellness. Everyone in the new year says, "Oh, I have New Year resolutions," right? But this year, I set an intention to really get out of my home. It's been COVID. We're all impacted by that. The panini, the pandemic, right? That girl. And I just said, I need to be able to get out, get active, and really connect with myself while also doing some of the community work that I do here in the city. And so that's what's been that is what has been bringing me so much joy is really connecting with myself, but also giving to my community.
I love that. I don't think I could have thought of a better way to just get back in touch with oneself. Like, that is so beautiful, giving back. I feel like that's part of the art of healing and
Yeah.
the experience of a lifetime. I think giving back is just so beautiful. So let's dive into that. Would you like to just share kind of how you got into this? What motivated you to get in, get involved in caring about your community?
Yeah, it definitely starts from a young age. So I currently identify as a queer, non-binary individual. And in my younger years, I had a lot of adversity. I was pushed out of school. A lot of people say, "Oh, you dropped out," but the system really isn't built for students of color and aren't really meant for folks of color to survive and thrive. And so, in my education, I was pushed out of school, and at the same time, I was really navigating my identity and trying to figure out myself. And so, I actually come from a religious family. My grandmother is a pastor, and I remember growing up in the church. And when I started to come out, that was really a struggle for my family. There was points of acceptance, and ultimately there was points of it's not acceptable. So with being pushed out of school and having the kind of like ultimate kind of confrontation of being pushed out of my home because I lived in LA with a group of friends while I was 17. And that really pushed me to say, to know and experience that I have to have my own self, my own, my own agency over myself. And so with that, I always wanted to become a city manager. For those of you who are unaware of your city structure, many cities have mayors and many cities have city managers. And in my city, I have both. And so I was like, what's the most highest paying job in the city and who makes all the decisions? And so from a young age, I said, I want to become the city manager because the city manager in the city of Long Beach holds the most power. here in the city, we have this power dynamic of the mayor appoints the city manager, but the city manager makes a lot of the policy recommendations that gets voted on by the city council and mayor. So I was like, who is the big boss? And I wanted to do that. So that's where a lot of my care for my community, or like the fire for giving back and also giving to myself, of being able to have my own agency over myself, really started, is ha- like experiencing those adversities, but also wanting to be able to make sure that the person who's making all the rules is doing it in an equitable way. And that's really where it started.
That is so moving. I just want to check in on you because you've mentioned some moments that could be reminiscent of some pretty real. So I just want to check in on you and ask how you're feeling after sharing.
I'm feeling well. Definitely those like flashback moments definitely came up, but those moments are part of my story and they made me who I am. And it took me many years to be able to be comfortable to share that publicly. And it is who I am, and I'm proud of it.
I love that. I feel like there's that poetic saying, from the ashes we rise, and like the phoenix.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, oh my God, I have the chills hearing your story, hearing your background, and just knowing how things played out. And to know where you're at now is, I have the chills.
Thank
So, yeah,
And I love that imagery of the phoenix because I'm one fly phoenix. Like I love expressing myself, and I just get to like let go and be myself and do the things that bring me joy. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is actually really beautiful imagery.
I mean, I'm inspired by your beautiful nails right now that you got going on.
Yeah, I just got them done. They're definitely Valentine's Day themed. They have hearts and rhinestones with glitter reds and pinks in them for those who are listening in who may not be able to see them. And they are sharp and stilettoed. So I love them.
Yes. And I love everything about you, seriously.
Thank you. Same.
Oh, today's about you. So I'd love to follow up by asking a question. So you mentioned earlier recognizing power
Mhm.
and how power functions. Do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been doing community organizing and youth organizing since the age of 18. I'm now 30. So I've kind of, you can say, like, I'm a leader in the field, especially in my city. And so when it comes to power, everything is connected to power. The power of money, the power of natural resources, who owns what, who has access to what. Ultimately, every day, folks are having a relationship with different types of power, right? And so for me in the field of community organizing, I'm really devoted to giving community and working with community to build community power, to be able to give folks what they need and also what they want. I think oftentimes we're told that we should just settle with crumbs because that's what folks think we need as community. But no, we need healthcare. We need housing rights. We need our trans brothers, sisters, and siblings to be safe in our communities. And youth and our elderly folk, they need the resources to be able to thrive. Our young, our next generation and our elderly are our wisdom keepers and culture keepers, and we need to take care of them as well. And so that's what really power means to me. And every day is about how to build that power.
That's so aware and encompassing. And I feel like we could spend an entire episode just focused on that alone.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if your past experiences inform some of your decision making and things that you do wanna call attention to.
Yeah. My own personal experiences of coming from a working family, having those experiences of actually have if folks remember the actual food stamps tickets, which nowadays they're called EBT, and having the resources to be able to eat really does inform the way I show up in the community and the way I build my own skills, but also build the skills of others to be able to fight for the resources that we deserve. And so when I see a thriving city, I see everyone being taken care of and not just like, oh, give me, but how can I support my neighbor? And how can my neighbor support me? It's all about reciprocity, right? And exchanging of knowledge and research and support. And it really looks like a city that goes together because we know each other and we take the time to talk with one another. And that's the kind of vision that I see for myself. It wasn't the experience that I had. I remember walking to school and there's drug needles on the floor. There are folks who are sleeping in the streets. There's police beating on community members. And it's just what's quote normal, but I say, smash that. We need to change that. And it really starts with us, the individual. And all it takes is one person saying, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Let me contribute in the way I can. No one needs to be um, the leader, but if someone contributes to a movement, even the slightest like donation or showing up to the meeting will help the movement continue forward so that we can see my vision or a collective vision where everyone's needs are met.
I love this. It is absolutely beautiful. And you're reminding me of something that I would call kind of like a I would relate to being like a collectivistic culture or a cultural mindset where the community at large or community in general is just the priority rather than the like me individual, like what I want, what I need. And then like it stops there.
Right.
Right. I think that's one of the things that American culture, westernized mainstream modern day American culture kind of pushes on people the idea that everything is a competition, right? Through capitalism, everything's a competition. You got to look out for yourself. Like all of these really toxic ways we teach people to just only look out for like one. And I think you're living proof of disruption of that. And you are pushing against it in this transformative work that you're doing to be like, let's pause on that because actually we're all better when we work together.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm talking about like theory and vision and also frameworks. But here in my city, some of the things that we're working towards is police free schools. On September 27th, a young person who was 18, caution warning, we talked about that. Um, so if you need to skip a minute or two, feel free to do so. September 27th, a young person, she was 18, was shot by a school security officer. Here in the city, the school security officers are able to have weapons on themselves and they have the authority to shoot if they feel their life is being threatened. And this officer decided to shoot into a car that was driving away and not even speeding away, but slowly driving away and shot and murdered this young individual. And so I'm working to get police out of our schools. Here also in the city, we're working to really challenge the racism, the structural racism that thrives in our city, all the way from the mayor and city council and city manager, all the way to the folks who are providing services, everyday services. like our clerks in City Hall, where you go pay your bills oftentimes, and the extra racism that they receive, right? And then there's many other priorities, collective priorities that we're working, but those are the two that I'm currently focusing on with my community organizing.
Just want to briefly respond and say that I'm so sorry to hear this. I'm so infuriated. I'm like, when will it end?
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that I know people like you who are so just like I feel like you're just like you're magical, right? Like you have something within you that is challenging all of these systems. I would say that is like just I can't explain it, but I am very grateful that you're doing this work and calling attention to this because it's gotta stop. It has to end. The police brutality, the violence, the murder, the state violence. We don't need police in schools. Like, what in the things that I really appreciate about you is your tenacity, your energy that you bring, this attitude and energy that says enough is enough. No one, no one should be experiencing this. No person, no family, no, it's got to stop. It's got to end. So, what are one of the projects you're currently working on to help dismantle some of this structural racism going on?
Yes. And thank you for acknowledging my contribution. And I also want to share that I'm just one of many, who are doing this work, and I can't do this alone. And so I do encourage anyone, if you see something in the news that triggers you and you feel called to take action, reach out. You can do so even by posting on social media and asking, where can I lend my support? And seek other people like myself who are in the fight to say, come join me in that work. And so the current work that I'm doing to dismantle these systems, remove police from schools, and really reimagine, rebuild these structures really looks like different stages. There's community input and voice in the process. So we have school board meetings that we go to share our our vision and our age with our elected officials that we voted into office to hold them accountable to change the system, as well as city council. So there's the community voice component, and then there's the partnership and planning that goes into developing policy. So some of the things that I've done since September, along with other folks a part of this coalition, the Safer LBUSD coalition, which I'm not the leader of, I'm one of many who are doing this work. We have met with the school district, and the school district is interested in working with us. And so through our partnership and collaboration, we're actually on a year plan to develop a list of recommendations that will go to executive staff as well as the school board to vote in how are we reimagining safety for the district. That includes removing police officers, removing weapons, and then also if we're taking things away, what are we replacing them with? Mental health providers, family coaches, resources to career and college, even just like space for after school activities and art, the basic needs of our students. And so that is the partnership kind of level. And then whenever there's those rocky moments of like, oh, we're not going to do this, then there's escalation. So escalation can look like various different ways, from phone banking to showing up to their offices, working with press to share the story, what's going on, to actions, demonstrations, even community art to share the story of what needs to change. So there's many different points that we're doing in this time to see the change happen. And there's ways for everyone in any capacity to be able to support and show support.
There are so many moving pieces here that I know we could move from, and I'm happy to go in any direction that you would like to. But for me, one of the things that really resonates with me is the idea that we know change needs to happen. We know these current systems that are in place are hurting people. They're hurting the Black community, the Latin community, they're hurting people of color, Indigenous folk. And so it is really exciting to hear that you've got this hope and logical plan moving forward to implement change, real change. And I think a lot of people who I interact with feel powerless right now, feel overwhelmed, and feel like it's impossible to imagine a different system or experience. And I want to call attention to this because you have just reignited the fire within me, knowing it's possible. People are working on this in very real ways. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And I'm hopeful to see you in this moment take those actions and those steps that you want to see in your community in the ways that you can be able to do it. And I hope other folks are inspired too.
Oh my gosh, that's the word. Yes. You like inspiration. Yes. I think we need more of that nowadays.
I mean, I'm no Oprah or anything, but I definitely love to hear folks feeling inspired by either my story or my encouragement. And I hope folks do take action. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. Tell us more about Long Beach. What's going on there? We know that there's a divide. So Long Beach is pretty divided, but there's some progress being made.
Yeah. So there's a little if folks are interested in getting into the history of Long Beach, that could be another podcast. I'm no historian, but I love my city so much and I have a deeper love for the people in it. And so a little snapshot of our history. The city of Long Beach used to be called Iowa by the Sea because in colonial times, Iowans came over to Long Beach to settle. So that our streets are named Bixby because for the Bixby family. There's other families that it's named after as well. And so from there, there has always been this like colonization mindset of like, this is our city, this is our town, and it lives to today. There, folks, there's always messages of history repeats itself, and it's true. And that's why history is important. And so even today, we all are kind of aware that this city is the tale of two cities. On the east side of Palm Beach, and just for folks, we are a beach city. We're a coastal city, of about 500,000 people. And on the east side, it actually is the bridge to Orange County. And then on the west side, it's kind of like all the rest of the folks. And so on the east side, you have white property owners, wealthy individuals, and very like beautiful like city plazas. We just got like second and PCH, which is like supposed to be the better version of the Grove in Beverly Hills. And yet on the other side, the west side, you have working class families. I actually grew up on that side. And if you're into rap, I actually live on the east side of Long Beach, which is technically the east side of the 710, but that's a whole different story. Let me go back. So yeah, on the west side, which is working class families. I grew up on that side of town. You have neighborhoods where folks are just struggling. The income is below the median earned income rates or statistics that exist. And so when you drive through the city of Long Beach from, let's say, PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, when you enter it from the west side and you exit it on the east side, you can see a very stark difference. And that actually plays out in city politics and where the resources go. So one example is we we as a community voted for Measure $8, which is a tax increase to actually spend it on repaving roads, buildings, city buildings, etc. And in my community, a lot of the buildings are still like old, outdated. Whereas on the east side, I've seen there's a popular shopping area called Belmont Shore. I've seen their median be renovated 4 times within a 3-year span. So if a median can be updated with the new signage, new plants in that area in that short amount of time, but we can't get beautification in my neighborhood, what does that tell you? That the east side is ruling the city. Now, that is a reality, but there is a force. I don't want to bring Star Wars into it, but there's a force brewing in our city for the past 10 to 15 years to fight that reality. And we're doing that through community organizing. So myself and my comrades and very committed individuals in the city are saying, we're tired. That's enough. We need to redistribute the wealth and the resources, and we need to protect our residents from being pushed. And so for the past 10 years, organizers have won renters' rights, have won policies protecting workers, have won money to give it to young people in these underserved communities. And we're going to continue to fight to make sure that everybody in our underserved community is getting the resources they need so that they can thrive and stay in our city. For folks who don't know, the Olympics are coming in I believe 2028, and LA and Long Beach are going to be the prime areas for the Olympics. And both institutions are already building out their plans how to get rid of the homeless, how to push out the working people. And myself and other folks are really out in our community to say, no, we're not going anywhere. And we're going to build the systems and replace these elected leaders to really reflect the type of city that we want to be and make sure that folks who live here and can thrive and stay here.
I feel like that is one of the most disgusting things about the Olympics that doesn't get enough coverage, in my opinion. I watched it on this when the Olympics were in Brazil years ago, or there was some major sporting event, a worldwide sporting event. And they were talking about how all the people in the poor areas were getting like literally pushed out or paid off by the government to leave so that they could put up brand new temporary apartments. It's just horrific. And it's to me, I just use the word disgusting. Like, I'm so glad that this is on your radar, even this far in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to have these things on our radar in advance. There's folks on the opposite side, the railing, who have 10-year plans, 20-year plans. And there's even a 100-year plan that has been in the works for South LA in relationship to USC. So look into that. So if our opposition can start to develop a plan 100 years in the making, we have to be disciplined and think about sustainability to make sure that we're fighting against that and we have our own plans to make sure we build the type of communities we want to see.
for long term.
Yes.
Like you said, so the word sustainability really resonates with me. Now, I want to bring it more to a little bit of an interpersonal level, a little bit more kind of like us live in our daily lives. And you had mentioned earlier that you're working on something called people power. Do you want to speak more on that?
Yeah. So the start to building people power is all about relationships and communication. And that's why I'm so glad to be on this podcast where communications is hot. I really feel that in order to even get into power, it's about the relationships. And so in my day to day, I spend a lot of time on Zoom because that's just where we're at. And I'm hopping to and from meetings with community members, taking phone calls, sometimes going out to city council or the school board with a mask on, telling people like 3 feet, 6 feet for some of those folks who are definitely on the other side of the mask debate, and really developing those relationships, opening up myself to other folks and really seeing where can we align on our values and making that ask. Like, do you want to be a part of this? And sometimes they ask me, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And oftentimes I say yes. And sometimes I say no for my own self care or self preservation. As Audrey Lorde tells us, it's so important. And so what that looks like is conversations like the one that we're having today. How are you? No, 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 no. How really are you? Are you okay? Have you had water? How have you been resting? How are your plants? I actually have 2 dogs. They're sleeping right next to me too. How are they? How is your family? And more to that is listening and engaging and meeting people where they're at. And so that's something that's super important to me. And when it comes to people power, first we gotta have relationships with one another before we can start to say, like, I trust you enough to fight this big system. And so, yeah, that's how I really see the start to people power. And there's also when you talk about interpersonal, like that agency that I was talking about earlier, like feeling and knowing that I have the power of myself, I have the power in my voice, even if it's shaky, shake it and let them hear you. It is so important to do that type of work. And once we have that spark of power in us, we can then be ready to share that. And this work has even translated in everyday skills, my relationships with my partners, my family, my friends. Even sometimes it's good or bad. Nothing is utopic. There's always going to be good and bad, but I've had the pleasure of being in a state of like reflection and thinking like, how can I benefit from this conversation that I'm having with this individual, and also like how can I contribute to that unified vision that we've been able to share with one another.
This is so beautiful. It's almost poetic, and it is poetic. And it reminds me of just how important human connection is. And for me, I feel really excited to be feeling that again. The more that I have these conversations with more people, the more that I kind of move out of my isolation I've been in for a few years. And it feels really scary, I think, for some folks, especially for my students who may be listening. It can feel really scary to feel like you can trust people. That was one of the things that kind of resonated with me was the trust building that can take place when we have just conversations, when we open up with each other. And I think for me, that's a key component to getting us into a like forward direction. I think we've got to work on building trust and figuring out, especially as communities who are impacted in so many different ways, right? Like my lived experience is different than yours. I totally mark and acknowledge the privileges that I have with my body and how I exist in relationship to systems of power. And I think that part of us building trust is being able to incorporate that component into these conversations as well while recognizing that, like, hey, we're all in this together. It's really exciting to know that people power is happening and that you're calling attention to this experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for those students or those folks who are listening and you're like, I don't know if I could trust this person. Well, that's your intuition speaking to you. And listen, question, research what folks are sharing with you and what makes most sense to you and what aligns with your personal values or what aligns with new values that you want to take on that or like values that you unlearned. Listen to your intuition, research, and question what you are being told. And if it does align with you, try it on. Definitely try it on. And I think ultimately that will bring you to a place where you feel okay about what you are going to interact with and engage with and take on or try on ultimate. Yeah,
I love that. That was such a compassionate message. Thank you for offering that.
sure.
Now, coming to a close, is there anything we have discussed or spoken about that you'd like to elaborate on, clarify more, or is there something we didn't get to speak to that you would like to add?
I would, yeah. Who's behind the movement? I think is important. And so for me, I am a fat, multiracial, uh, non-binary person who is out in the community fighting the good fight. I fight along Black women, and they mean so much to me. I get a little emotional, but they mean so much to me because they are mother figures, and collectively, in addition to them, we have Indigenous folks who are doing this work, Asian women doing this work. Our in Long Beach, we have a large community, Cambodian community, and I love to be able to get to work with them every single day. And that's the folks who are behind the movement here in the city of Long Beach. And oftentimes, those are the folks who are behind our social movements today. And I think we can get lost, stuck in the mud in the policy conversation, the structures, the models, the methods. But ultimately, this movement is multi diverse, multi ethnic, multi identity, and it's beautiful. And I feel like that's something that I definitely want to round out our conversation with is coming back to the people that I'm so blessed to work with every single day in this fight and leaving behind a legacy that we may not be fully 100% content with, but we know that we made impact. And our next generation will benefit from it so that they can continue on whatever they want to do with their lives. So I think that's important to me to round out this conversation.
I am very grateful for you acknowledging the people behind the movement, especially the people and the women of color and the people of color in Long Beach who are taking on these systems daily. And we know this work is exhausting, it is hard, it is draining, it's also rewarding in some ways. And the fact that you call attention to your, I would say, comrades who are fighting alongside you, who are in this together with you across these multidimensional identities, it is really moving and beautiful to hear you acknowledge them. And I think should they listen, they might be like, shout out. Which a lot of people forget. A lot of people forget to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're all in this together. Coming to a close, is there anything else you want to speak to? Are you working on any current projects that you would like to invite my classes to look into? Can they find you on social media or some of these organizing projects, etc.?
yeah, definitely. So, in regards to our police free schools work in the city of Long Beach, you can definitely Google Safer, SAFERLBUSD. We have a page on the Long Beach Forward website. That's lbforward.org. And you can read more about the campaign there. In regards to our structural racism work, you can definitely look at the Office of Equity here in the city of Long Beach. You can read a new report that just came out. It's 136 pages. Wah, wah, wah. 136 pages of small steps towards progression on reconciliation here in the city of Long Beach. That what the commission that I'm on, the Equity Relations Commission, helped inform and contributed to. And in regards to me, if you're so moved to connect with me, you can have my Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Covington, COVV as in Victor, INGTONLB. And then you can see me on there doing my activism, but also being me and my thoughty self and living life and having fun as best as possible because the political is personal and the personal is political. And I'm not going to be held down by like the expectations of this is what an organizer looks like or this is what an activist should act like because I'm so diverse. And as we mentioned earlier in the beginning of the podcast, like I'm gonna be that flashy phoenix and I'm gonna own it. And so, yeah, definitely connect with me on Instagram, Covington LB, and see me on my journey. Yeah, for sure.
Obsessed. Thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart for giving your time and energy by being a part of this conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I love your podcast.
Thanks. I'll have you come back.